Contestant number 2. Taylor Candella, The Ripple Effect. The Ripple Effect, Taylor Candella.
About 10 years ago, I was inducted into my high school's Athletic Hall of Fame, back where I'm from in Cincinnati. I was one of over 700 students in my graduating class at Lakota West, and one of only 5 chosen to receive the honor. It was a special moment for me. Cross country and track were a huge part of my life for almost 2 decades. So to be able to reflect on some of my experience was something that I'll cherish for a long time. One thing I learned at that event was how much of an impact my parents had on me growing up. Ever since my first race, back in the 5th grade, my mom and dad did everything they could to help me get better. My mom always made sure I had enough snacks and Gatorade to keep me fueled throughout the meet. My dad spent hours on the computer, looking up times of my competitors and helping me with the race strategy. At the meet, I could always hear my mom, "Let's go, Tay!" My dad would run from point to point to point, yelling, "Come on, Tay, man, there's 2 right behind you!" In fact, at most meets, my dad probably ran more than I did. My parents taught me how to be humble, how to win a race without talking trash, but rather go up to the guy who got second and tell him how awesome he did. But they also taught me to be competitive and how to work hard. My dad taped a piece of paper on my desk with a quote on it that read, "Somewhere, someplace, someone is practicing while you are not. And when you meet that person face to face, he will beat you. Unknown." Now I knew the whole time that unknown was my dad, but it's still a great quote. Fortunately, I was blessed with the opportunity to go on to bigger and better things and run at the Ohio State University. And I quickly found out that everyone was good at the collegiate level. There were 10 Taylor Candellas on every team. I was no longer the man, I was just fighting for a spot. But my competitiveness drove me to want to succeed there as well. My dream, ever since I started racing, was to break the 4-minute mile. You see, breaking the 4-minute mile in track is a big deal. You get signed by a shoe company to run professionally. You get to go to the Olympic trials and other world-class races. My sophomore year as a Buckeye, I got my mile time down to 4 minutes and 7 seconds. However, in my remaining years, I had knee surgery and then heart surgery, and my running career was over. Heart surgery at 22 years old. Have you ever been 7 seconds away from achieving the greatest goal of your entire life, and then having it all ripped away from you? No more dreams of breaking the 4-minute mile. No more hopes of running professionally and trying to make the Olympics someday. What I found out after I graduated, as every athlete eventually does, is that life goes on after sports are over. And through some maturing, I came to the realization that at the end of your life, it doesn't matter how good at sports you were in high school. It doesn't matter how good at sports you were in college, or even professionally. What matters is the legacy you leave behind. The people whose lives you change forever. It doesn't matter how much money we make or how much stuff we accumulate. It's about impacting people. In 50 years, no one's going to talk about how many races I won or how many records I broke. You might be thinking, 50 years? More like half an hour. My entire running life, I chased that 4-minute mile and I never got it. And that's okay. Because 4 years later, no one would have cared even if I had. What people care about are things that last a lifetime. Relationships. A second thing I learned from that Hall of Fame event was the ripple effect one person can have on another. If my parents didn't help me get better, I would have never been good enough to run at Ohio State. Well, if I didn't go to Ohio State, I would have never found a group on campus called Athletes in Action. If I didn't find Athletes in Action, I would have never gone on several mission trips to Africa. And if I didn't go on those mission trips, I would have never met several key leaders who run nonprofit organizations and ministries. If I didn't meet those leaders, I would have never been able to become friends with them. In fact, my wife and I had some of them in our home just over a year ago during their first trip to the United States. If I wasn't friends with those leaders, I would have never partnered with them financially. And without financial partnerships, those leaders would have never been able to dig wells in their villages, get medical supplies for their people, and provide food and education for kids who can't afford it. That ripple goes on and on and on. Each interaction, each impact, a new link in the chain of someone else's life. Impact can last a lifetime. Impact can last generations. So my charge to everyone listening is to live your life for the ripple effect on other people's lives. You might never get to see the end result. In fact, you might only be a single link or two in the chain. But without your link, those chains, they don't keep growing. A common term people hear in a motivational talk is you gotta be a go-getter. But I'd like to offer the inverse of that advice. I would urge you to be a go-giver. Be a giver of your time. Be a giver of your finances. Be a giver of your love. And when enough people choose to be others-centric instead of self-absorbed, when we start to think about how much we could give more than how much we might get, whoo, that is how you change the culture. And that, ladies and gentlemen, with your ripple, is how we change the world.